My name is Eliza Rowan, and one day I stood in my parents' backyard, dressed in a sharp white power suit, looked my father dead in the eye and said, "Oh, now you can see me," before walking right past him without a hug, a word, or a second glance. That was the same day I smiled, shook hands with the CEO of my startup, and told my mother, "We're hiring, but not you," while Madison cried quietly behind them. "Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I want to know who's out there finding their voice too." In Raleigh, North Carolina, on a humid spring afternoon, the air in our family's living room was thick with tension and too much fabric softener. The curtains were the same floral print from my childhood, slightly yellowed now, clinging to the past like everything else in this house. I was home for the weekend, reluctantly. My mom had texted me, "Family dinner, Eliza. Don't make it a thing." As if I was the one always making it a thing. Madison, my younger sister by 4 years, stood center stage, like always waving around a trifold poster board titled Water Cycle Wonders, decorated with glitter glue and exactly one fact about condensation. My parents beamed at her like she'd won a Nobel Prize. "I did it all by myself," Madison announced, practically glowing. "Mrs. Galloway said I might be chosen for the science fair finals." I blinked slowly. My father, Alan, clapped from his recliner, nearly knocking over his Diet Coke. "That's our Maddie, brilliant and creative." My mother, Diana, added in her usual clipped tone, "Always knew she was the gifted one." The taste in my mouth turned metallic. "You're 17, I said, probably a little too sharply. "You just learned the water cycle," Madison's smile faltered. "It's not about the difficulty, Eliza, it's about the presentation." "Oh, right, presentation. I almost forgot," I muttered, pacing toward the fireplace where old family photos mocked me from every angle. "Kind of like when I made all your PowerPoints for history class, did all of Chloe's algebra homework, and rewrote Madison's entire Macbeth essay junior year. That was some solid presentation." Dad chuckled nervously like I'd made a joke, but I wasn't smiling. I turned to Mom. "You always made me do their work, and never, not once, did anyone even say thank you." Mom didn't flinch, she just gave me that look. The one that used to send me straight to my room without dinner. Calm, ice cold, certain of her righteousness. "You were always just more responsible," she said like it was some compliment. I felt something snap quietly like thread unraveling inside my chest. Responsible, not brilliant, not gifted, not creative, just the one who handled everything. Madison crossed her arms, suddenly defensive. "You didn't have to help me, you know." "Didn't I?" I laughed bitterly. "You would have failed sophomore English without me. You'd still think a thesis statement is a disease." Dad raised his hands like a traffic cop. All right, let's just all calm down. This isn't the time." "Of course not," I cut in, heart thudding. "Because when is the time, Dad? When Chloe wins Most Improved for typing the essay I stayed up until 3 a.m. writing for her, or when Madison gets a trophy for something I practically built." My voice cracked. "Do you even know what I did in school?" Silence. A beat passed, then another. Mom exhaled and picked up her wine glass. "You were always good, Eliza. You didn't need praise, you just handled things." Madison looked at me, pity dancing behind her eyes. "You really need to let some of this go." "No, not this time." I grabbed my coat from the arm of the couch. "You know what? Enjoy the water cycle, it's a real miracle." "Eliza," Dad called after me, but I was already at the door. "You should thank me," I said, my back to them. "But you won't, you never do." The door closed behind me, muffling their responses if there were any. I stood outside for a moment, the spring wind pushing against my jacket, and realized this wasn't even about the glitter poster or the homework. It was about everything. All those years spent earning nothing more than silence. But that silence ends now. 3 years later, I found myself curled into a bean-bag chair on the third floor of Davis Library, typing furiously into my laptop while my coffee went cold. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but it didn't bother me. I was used to background noise. What I wasn't used to was being somewhere I didn't feel invisible. UNC Chapel Hill was where I finally became more than the responsible one. It started sophomore year, when I joined a student-led sustainability initiative called Verge, mostly out of curiosity. I thought I'd be folding brochures and handing out composting flyers. I didn't expect to end up rewriting their entire back-end grant tracking system by the end of the month, or that people would notice. Ryan noticed first. Ryan, one of the original Verge founders, was an environmental studies major with a sarcastic streak, and a permanent tan from weekend hikes. He walked up to me in a study room one night, squinted at my laptop, and asked, "Are you fixing the budget interface?" I nodded, unsure if I was in trouble. He blinked. "You're incredible. That code was a nightmare." It was the first time someone had called me incredible and meant it. From there, I was pulled deeper into the team. I started leading strategy meetings, managing logistics for our recycling pilot, coordinating volunteers. And somehow, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel used. I felt essential. And not in a martyrdom kind of way. People here saw what I did and said something about it. One Friday night, after Verge scored a feature in the campus newsletter for diverting 2,000 pounds of waste in one semester, Ryan hosted a casual celebration pizza night at his off-campus apartment. Nothing fancy, string lights, beanbag chairs, cold beer, and stacks of mismatched pizza boxes, but the room radiated warmth. I'd brought brownies. My mom's recipe. She never said much, but she baked with love. I guess that stuck with me. The team passed them around like treasure, and for once, no one called me overachiever or intense for showing up with homemade dessert. Someone tossed me a Red Bull. I cracked it open, laughing as Jaya, one of the newer team members, stood dramatically on a chair and shouted, "Speech." Ryan shook his head, then stood with his own can of soda. "To Eliza," he said, raising it. The room quieted. She came in thinking she'd be another volunteer, but she rebuilt our entire operations model in like a month. If Verge has an engine, it's her. If we're growing, it's because she planted the seeds. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full of respect, of appreciation, of something I hadn't realized I was starving for until I finally got a taste of it. Then the room erupted in applause. Jaya whooped. Noah whistled. Someone shouted, "Queen Eliza." I tried to laugh it off, but my throat tightened and I blinked fast. I wasn't used to this, being seen without having to shout. As the noise faded, Ryan leaned over to me and said quietly, "You're going to change the world, you know." I smiled. "Not without all of you." But something shifted in me that night. For the first time, I saw a future that didn't revolve around proving myself to people who had no interest in seeing me clearly. This was mine. These people didn't love me out of obligation. They respected me because they'd chosen to. Later, as the crowd thinned and everyone lounged in a happy, sleepy haze, I sat on the kitchen counter, legs swinging, watching the glow of the room. I thought about that living room in Raleigh, so tight with unspoken rules and expectations, so cold despite the closeness. And I thought maybe family isn't where you come from. Maybe it's who claps when you walk in, who listens when you talk, who looks you in the eye and says, "You matter." I couldn't change the past. But here, in a dingy apartment lit by string lights and leftover pizza grease, I finally felt like I was building something new, something real, something mine. The Verge team had just gone viral, well, campus viral. A short clip of our pilot compost drone landing in the center of the quad during Earth Week, narrated by Ryan in his usual goofy, documentary-style voice, had blown up overnight. By morning, it had over 10,000 views on Instagram, a repost by the official UNC account, and 3 interview requests from local stations. I nearly spit out my tea when I saw a professor quote it in their lecture slides. For once, my name wasn't buried in the footnotes. It was in the byline, the credits, the About Us blurb. Eliza Rowan, Operations Lead. 4 words I'd never seen attached to myself before. Not older sister, not babysitter, not the one who makes it work. Operations Lead. It felt like a name I'd chosen, not one I'd inherited. To celebrate, Ryan suggested we head to Jordan Lake for a weekend bonfire. "We earned it," he said. "Besides, it's our last semester together. Let's do one thing we'll still talk about when we're 40. So there we were. 9 of us piled into 3 cars with mismatched camping chairs, plaid blankets, and enough marshmallows to launch a food fight. I brought graham crackers and a Bluetooth speaker. Ryan brought the firewood and his battered acoustic guitar, which he couldn't really play but strummed anyway between bad jokes and inside references. We set up by the water, just as the sun began to lower, staining the lake amber and pink. Smoke curled into the air as the flames crackled and someone passed around hot cider from a thermos. I don't remember laughing that hard in years, maybe ever. There were no roles that night. No one was in charge, no one was keeping score. At some point, I wandered a few steps away from the group, standing at the edge of the water with my sneakers sinking slightly into the wet sand. The waves lapped quietly, just enough to fill the silence. Ryan came up beside me, holding 2 mugs. He handed me one and nodded toward the lake. Remind me why we didn't do this sooner. Because we were busy changing the world, I said, half teasing. He grinned. That we are. We stood there a while, the firelight flickering behind us, our friends' laughter echoing faintly. It was one of those rare, suspended moments when everything feels aligned. Like your life finally fits. I sipped my cider and exhaled. Hey, Ryan. Yeah. I hesitated, swirling the cider in my mug. Graduation's in a few weeks. I was thinking, if you all wanted to come, I'd really like that. He looked at me, really looked. You want us to come? I gave a small shrug. I haven't invited anyone else yet, but you guys, you've meant more to me than I can say. He didn't say anything right away, just bumped his shoulder gently into mine. We'll be there, Eliza, all of us. Front row, obnoxiously loud, signs and all. A laugh escaped me before I could help it. You're going to get me disqualified. Worth it. I turned toward him, and in the soft fire glow, he looked sincere in a way I wasn't used to. There was no pity, no obligation, no family guilt coded in his expression. Just showing up because he wanted to. You know, I said, voice lower now, I used to think people only came to things because they had to. Birthdays, recitals, graduations. It was never about me, just about being polite or looking good in pictures. He was quiet. So I stopped asking, I added, blinking toward the horizon. Stopped hoping. You don't have to hope with us, Ryan said. Just ask, we'll come. The fire popped behind us and a burst of laughter shot up as someone told a wild story about a compost bin catching fire last fall. For once, the warmth I felt didn't come from the flames. I looked at Ryan again. Thank you. He lifted his mug toward mine. To new families. We clinked gently, and in that moment I let myself believe him. Back at the fire, Jaya was trying to toast a marshmallow between 2 twigs and failing miserably. I joined her, laughing as it caught fire, and let Ryan slip back into the circle. But inside, something had shifted. I'd spent years trying to earn a seat at a table that never had a chair for me. Now, I was building my own table. And this time, I knew exactly who I'd invite to sit beside me. Graduation morning arrived wrapped in that perfect kind of sky, endless Carolina blue, like it had been painted on just for us. Not a single cloud. Not a whisper of doubt in the air, except in me. I stood in front of the mirror in my tiny campus apartment, adjusting the navy blue sash I'd earned for service leadership. My hair was pulled back, my honor cords looped neatly, my white dress ironed hours ago in a flutter of nervous energy. I should have felt proud. Triumphant, even. Instead, I felt exposed. The guest ticket envelope lay unopened on my desk. I'd reserved 4 seats. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't remind Madison. I didn't even text Chloe. Part of me had held on to some impossible thread of hope, though, some whisper that maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise me. Maybe they'd remember that I was graduating magna cum laude. Maybe they'd show up just because this was my moment. But when I walked into Kenan Stadium and scanned the stands, I saw it immediately. Row G, seats 14 through 17. Empty, no floral dresses. No handmade sign, no mom with her camera, no Maddie with a dramatic late entrance. Just 4 blank spots in a sea of cheering families. I stared for a second too long. Long enough for the girl next to me to notice. Waiting on someone? She asked softly. I gave a tight smile. It's fine. I took my seat, heart buzzing with static, and stared straight ahead as the university president began her speech about resilience and transformation. Words I should have felt in my bones. But all I could hear was the echo of what wasn't said. The silence from home. Until Eliza, a voice cut across the stadium, sharp and unmistakable. My heart stopped. Eliza Rowan, you freaking legend. I turned, confused, until I saw them. Ryan standing at the top of the bleachers, arms thrown wide, wearing a t-shirt with my face on it, my face. Blown up cartoonishly with Queen of Compost, written in glitter paint across the bottom. I burst out laughing. Loud, ugly. The kind that doubled me over and made the girls beside me start clapping just for the joy of it. And then I saw the others, Jaya, Noah, Petra, even Liam, who once said he hated large crowds. They were all there, waving handmade signs. Eliza makes the earth turn. SHE graduated and saved the planet. You weren't invited, but we came anyway. That one was definitely Jaya's. I blinked furiously, but it was useless. Tears welled up hot and fast, spilling over as I looked up at the group that had seen me, the real me, and decided to show up. Ryan caught my eye again, grinning like an idiot, and cupped his hands around his mouth. We're here, always. My chest cracked open. Not from pain. From relief. From finally knowing what it feels like to be chosen, not out of blood or duty or obligation, but out of love. When my name was called, the crowd erupted, not for everyone else but for me. A wall of cheers hit me as I stepped forward to accept my diploma, shaking the dean's hand with trembling fingers. In the background, Ryan's voice bellowed again. "That's OUR girl." The dean raised his eyebrows and whispered, "You've got quite the fan club." "I know," I whispered back, my smile breaking through. After the ceremony, I pushed through the crowd outside the stadium until I spotted them under a willow tree, Ryan waving me over like a lunatic, the others passing around a bottle of sparkling cider like it was champagne. As I reached them, Ryan wrapped me in a hug so tight it nearly knocked the wind out of me. "Proud doesn't even cover it," he said into my hair. I hugged him back harder than I meant to. "You guys didn't have to do all this," I mumbled. "Exactly why we did," Jaya said, sliding an arm around my shoulders. "We don't show up because we're supposed to, we show up because you matter." I nodded, too choked up to speak, and someone passed me a glass. I raised it high, blinking through the blur of sun and tears. "To Verge," I managed, voice wavering. "To Eliza," Ryan said back. "Our glue, our compass, our carbon-neutral queen." Everyone laughed and cheered, and for once I didn't feel like I was filling a silence. I was surrounded by sound. Support, celebration. It was enough to drown out the emptiness of those 4 quiet chairs in row G. They hadn't come. But these people had. And that made all the difference. That night my heels kicked off in the corner, cap and gown folded neatly over the back of a chair. I curled up on my bed with a glass of champagne and my phone. A few congratulatory texts from classmates trickled in, a heart emoji from my advisor, even a meme from Noah that made me snort laugh. I was floating light, warm, full of something dangerously close to happiness. My team had left a little while ago, lingering in the parking lot until the bugs got aggressive. Ryan promised we'd all go out for brunch the next morning, somewhere with irresponsible amounts of carbs. He kissed my cheek before heading to his car, and for once I didn't overthink it. I deserved joy, just for one night. I took another sip, pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, and opened Instagram. At first, it was what I expected, photos from graduation. My name tagged a dozen times. Someone had uploaded a reel of me walking across the stage with Ryan's ridiculous hollering in the background. I smiled, heart humming. And then I saw it, a new post from Madison. It was the background that hit me first, the fence-lined backyard of our house in Raleigh. The string lights still sagging from last summer's birthday party. Our old picnic table draped with a gingham cloth. Everyone was there. My father at the grill, flipping ribs with his Kiss the Chef apron. Chloe holding a sparkler and grinning ear to ear. My mother in a sundress, one hand on her wine glass, the other around Madison's shoulder. And there on the center table, a sheet cake with blue frosting that read, "Congrats, Maddie." The caption, "Family time is the best time, Blue Heart, celebrating our girl Maddie's hard work and bright future. Proud family graduation season blessed." I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was shocked. I wasn't, not really, but because of the ease, the comfort, the cheerful ignorance of it all. No text, no call, no message. No "Hey, how was your ceremony?" No "Sorry we couldn't make it." Nothing. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had replaced me. My champagne glass tilted and I realized my hand was trembling. I set it down slowly, trying not to spill. Maddie had graduated high school last week. That I knew. What I didn't know, what no one bothered to tell me, was that they were throwing her a full family celebration the same day I was graduating college with honors. I tapped through the photos like I was poking a bruise. There was Chloe laughing as she held a baby cousin. There was Mom hugging Madison next to the cake. Dad holding up a beer and a mock toast. Plate after plate of food. Matching dresses. Glitter balloons. No mention of me. No seats saved. No time taken. No effort made. I wanted to be rational. Logical, I told myself. They had to pick one event, Raleigh or Chapel Hill. They couldn't be in 2 places at once. Sure, but they didn't even tell me. They didn't say, "We're sorry, but we can't come." They didn't ask me how I was getting there. They didn't ask if I had plans after. They didn't even pretend to care. I tried to laugh. Tried to summon the same bitter, numb reflex I'd always leaned on when the family scales tipped yet again in Madison's favor. But this time, it didn't work. This time it cut deep, because this wasn't a forgotten dance recital or a missed award assembly in 8th grade. This was the culmination of years. All-nighters, internships, leadership roles, grinding through projects while working two part-time jobs. This was mine, and they couldn't even be bothered to acknowledge it. I set my phone face down and closed my eyes, the hum of the room suddenly too quiet. You always were more responsible. I could still hear my mother's voice. That's why they didn't come. Because somewhere along the way, I'd been branded as the strong one, the independent one, the one who didn't need them, but strong doesn't mean you don't bleed, and independence doesn't mean you don't deserve to be celebrated. That night I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurt, but because the hurt was old, familiar, etched into the bones already. Instead, I picked up my phone again, opened Instagram, and stared at that caption one more time. Family time is the best time. Sure. But what happens when your family never makes time for you? The next morning, I woke up early, far too early for a Sunday after graduation. But my body didn't care that I'd barely slept. The ache in my chest had settled into something colder, cleaner. Not grief. Not quite anger. Something sharper. Resolve. I showered, got dressed in silence, and made my way to the dealership by 9:00 a.m. sharp, keys in hand for a test drive appointment I'd made 2 weeks ago, when I still thought someone in my family might ride home with me after the ceremony. When I stepped onto the lot, the sales associate recognized me instantly. "Eliza Rowan, right?" he said with a smile. "Your car's ready for pickup. Congratulations again." I signed the final paperwork without flinching. It was the most money I'd ever spent in a single moment. And yet, it didn't scare me. Not today. By 10:30 I was standing in the lot, leaning back against the sleek graphite gray hybrid SUV I had worked for, saved for, and earned without a single ounce of help. It gleamed in the morning sun, a quiet badge of everything they never gave me. I checked the angle, then set up my phone on timer mode using a nearby trash can and a coffee cup for height. One pose. Just one. Arms folded, sunglasses on, the keys dangling from one finger. The caption came to me in a flash, clean, sharp, undeniable. "Gift to myself, picked it up today to take my family to graduation. Guess I drove alone." I hit post, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. 15 minutes later, the first buzz, then another, and another. I watched the screen light up like a slot machine. First, a text from Mom. "We need to talk, honey." The smiley face made my stomach turn. Then the missed calls started. 1, 5, 12, 42, all from Madison. I sat there in the driver's seat, doors locked, phone glowing, and I didn't move. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the key and listened to the smooth hum of the engine as it came to life. The leather seats were cool beneath me. The steering wheel fit perfectly in my hands. This was mine, all of it. And for the first time in days, I smiled. Not the kind of smile you give to make others comfortable. The kind you give yourself when you finally know they saw it. They saw me, not because I begged, not because I reminded them, but because I told the truth. Loudly, publicly, unapologetically, I scrolled through the comments beneath the post. Most were from friends, classmates, people from Verge. "Yes, Eliza Queen. This is the energy we need all 2026. They should be ashamed, but you did it anyway." And then I saw a like from someone unexpected. "Chloe, no comment. Just the heart." I stared at her tiny profile picture for a long moment. A crack maybe, a sliver of understanding or guilt, I couldn't be sure yet, but still she saw it. I turned off the phone and rested my head back against the seat. This wasn't revenge, not yet, this was the shift. The moment the scales tipped and stayed tipped, I had always shown up. I had always worked quietly. I had always hoped they'd see me. Now, I was done hoping. If they wanted to talk, they'd have to find the words. Because I'd already found mine, and I wasn't going back. I waited exactly 2 weeks. 2 weeks of silence from my family, except for the brief storm of missed calls and that one hollow message from Mom. "We just didn't think you needed us, sweetheart. You're so independent." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Then came the invite, a backyard party for Madison. Celebrating her scholarship and senior send-off. The digital flyer chirped, with sunflowers and glitter fonts. The kind of event where the whole neighborhood gets a burger and a front row seat to our family's carefully polished version of joy. I wasn't officially invited, of course not. But I knew they expected me to show up anyway, polite, low profile, quietly supportive, like I always was, so I did show up. Just not the way they remembered. I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home at 3:17 p.m. sharp, just as the party was in full swing. Kids were chasing each other with bubble wands. Grown-ups clustered around the grill, nursing sweet tea and light beer. Pop music floated through the air, competing with laughter and the buzz of suburban celebration. I stepped out of my new car and shut the door with a deliberate click. I was wearing a crisp, cream power suit tailored to perfection, paired with soft gold heels that clicked against the pavement like punctuation. My hair was smooth, parted down the middle, not the frizzy ponytail I used to wear while running everyone's errands. My sunglasses covered my eyes, but not the quiet satisfaction on my face. Conversation faltered. Heads turned. The backyard didn't fall completely silent, but the temperature shifted. That unmistakable ripple when someone unexpected enters the room, someone you thought would always play small suddenly standing tall. Dad was the first to recover. He stepped forward from the grill, spatula still in hand. "Eliza, you look amazing." He said it like it startled him. Like it was a compliment he wasn't used to offering. I didn't blink, I didn't smile. I just pulled my sunglasses down the bridge of my nose and looked him in the eye. "Oh," I said, tone cool and crisp as white wine. "Now you can see me." He opened his mouth, then closed it. Behind him, my mother was frozen near the lemonade table, lips parted, hand wrapped too tightly around a mason jar. Madison stood beside her in a sundress, caught mid-sentence, her smile still fixed for someone else. A beat of awkward silence passed. Then I walked in, past the neighbors who remembered me as the helpful older sister, past the cousins who once asked me to rewrite their resumes, past the aunt who said I was a bit intense for a girl. I walked straight into the space that used to shrink me and took up room. A young woman I didn't recognize whispered to someone, "Who is that?" And I realized, for the first time, they didn't know. They didn't know this version of me. Not the girl who stayed up late to proofread Madison's essays. Not the girl who carried coolers and folding chairs without being asked. Not the girl who never complained, never asked for thanks. This was the woman who built something on her own, who stood on a stage her family didn't bother to attend, who bought her own car, toasted her own name, and learned to stop waiting for applause from people who never clapped. I walked up to the drink table, poured myself a lemonade, and sipped. The sugar clung to my lips. The silence clung to theirs. Let them feel it. Let them sit in it. This wasn't revenge, not yet, but it was the warning shot. It didn't take long for them to adjust their faces. That was the part that always stunned me, how fast my family could slip into their version of normal. Pretend nothing happened. Rewrite reality with practiced smiles and a side of barbecue. Within 5 minutes of my arrival, someone pressed a paper plate into my hand, already dripping with sauce. "Try the ribs," my dad offered, voice too cheerful. "You always liked them, right?" He looked relieved just to say something. I stared at the plate like it might bite me. "Oh, and there's beer in the cooler," Madison piped up, too fast, too bright. "Dad found that kind you used to like, Eliza." I turned slowly toward her. She was wearing yellow, like always, Mom's favorite color on her. Her cheeks were flushed, smile fixed, like she was auditioning for a role she used to play easily. They were all playing parts now. "Thank you," I said flatly, setting the plate down on the side table without taking a bite. Mom swooped in next, holding a pair of tongs and avoiding my gaze as she rearranged the corn on the grill. "You look very professional today," she said. "Is that your way of saying I don't belong at a barbecue?" I asked, voice soft. She blinked at me, caught. "Of course not, it's just, we're so glad you're here." "Are you?" Because they were acting like nothing happened. As if I hadn't graduated 2 weeks ago. As if they hadn't missed it entirely. As if there wasn't a blue frosted "Congrats Maddie" cake mocking me from the folding table across the yard. And that's when the pressure inside me started to boil. It was the forced smiles, the nervous laughter, the desperate normalcy. I walked toward the picnic table where Mom had laid out a stack of mismatched plastic forks. Madison followed me, still talking, still smiling, like this was just another summer Sunday. "Liza, I meant to text you that day, I really did, but then Grandma showed up early and we had to get the burgers going, and you had time to post," I cut in. She stopped. "What? You had time to post about your party, the cake, the drinks, #blessed. You had time to write a caption, but not one text, not one call." Her smile cracked. "I didn't think you'd care," she said quietly. "You didn't ask us to come." I felt something snap, not loud, not dramatic, just final. Because I was tired of begging you to see me. Everyone nearby was quiet now, pretending not to listen but very much listening. I turned to the group, my parents, my sister, a few cousins frozen mid-chew. "You all skipped the most important day of my life for this." My voice shook. I didn't want it to. I wanted to be composed, cool. But the truth had claws, and I couldn't keep them tucked in. For matching sunglasses and hot dogs and cake that doesn't even have a real name on it, I added, eyes locking on the glittery Maddie sign strung up behind the swing set. Dad sighed, stepping closer. Eliza, honey, come on, we thought you'd understand. I stared at him. Understand what? That my success wasn't convenient for their calendar. That me doing well didn't deserve the same attention Madison got for passing high school. You thought I'd understand, I repeated slowly, the words dry in my mouth. Because I'm the responsible one, because I don't throw tantrums or cry when people forget me. Don't do this, Mom said through clenched teeth. Not here. Why not? I snapped. Because it's Maddie's day again, Madison's voice cut through the tension like a whip. Eliza, stop. I turned to her, expecting more deflection, more excuses, but her eyes were shiny, and not just from the heat. You're ruining everything, she whispered. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't plan the party. I didn't. Her voice broke. I didn't know it would hurt you this much. Then she did something I hadn't seen her do since we were kids. She cried, tears welled, broke, and spilled. And then, without waiting for anyone to comfort her, she turned and stormed off toward the side gate, disappearing around the corner of the house. The silence she left in her wake was thick, sticky, awful. No one moved. Not Dad, not Mom, not me. Just a wind chime somewhere behind the porch, clinking like distant applause for a performance no one wanted to watch anymore. I stood there, still in my heels, still holding my lemonade, and realized something. I wasn't the only one who felt hollow in this house. But I was the only one who finally said it out loud. The sun had dipped lower by the time I finally found her. Madison sat at the far edge of the backyard, just beyond the mess of laughter and clinking bottles, curled on one of the loungers near the pool. Her heels were kicked off beside her. One hand dangled over the armrest, fingers trailing the cushion. Her mascara left faint smudges under her eyes, like shadows that didn't quite know where to land. For once she looked small, not polished, not bubbly, not posing for anyone's approval, just Maddie. I stood a few feet away, uncertain. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore. It wasn't even cold. It was tired and heavy. I slowly stepped closer and lowered myself into the lounger beside her. My power suit didn't feel like armor anymore. It felt like skin I wasn't sure I wanted to shed. She didn't look up. I didn't mean for it to be like that, she whispered, voice rough. I didn't think you'd even care. I didn't answer right away. I watched the pool's surface, glassy and still, the string lights from the patio reflecting like upside-down stars. You're wrong, I finally said. I cared too much. She wiped at her eyes and her voice cracked as she said, You always looked like you had it all figured out, like you didn't need anyone. I breathed in deeply. I needed you to say thank you, I said quietly. Back then, when I stayed up all night editing your essays or when I skipped field trips to help you with presentations. I needed you to say it just once. I didn't know how, she said, barely audible. And yesterday, I added, I needed you yesterday, more than I wanted to admit. She let out a broken breath. You know what's the worst part? What? I thought showing up to your graduation would make me feel like a side character, that if I went you'd shine so bright I'd disappear, and I hated that feeling, I was scared of it. I turned to look at her fully for the first time in a long time. She wasn't lying. She wasn't deflecting, she was just telling the truth. You never had to disappear, I said. You just had to stop standing on top of me. She let that sink in. The sprinkler system clicked on in the far corner and a few drops misted the air between us. I want to make it up to you, she said suddenly, turning to me with wide, tear-rimmed eyes. Not just with words, I want to do something that matters. I don't know what yet, but I'll do it, I promise. I stared at her, unsure whether to trust her promise or brace for disappointment. But then I remembered something Ryan said during one of our long Verge nights. People don't change in grand speeches. They change in small, hard choices, over and over again. This wasn't a grand speech. It was a small, hard moment, and Madison was choosing something different. I nodded slowly. Okay. Okay, she asked, eyes searching mine. We start small, I said. No big makeover montage. No drama. Just one thing, she sniffled. Like what? You're going to come to work with me, her eyebrows shot up. At Verge, not just come contribute, learn something, earn something, show up the way I always showed up for you. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. That sounds terrifying. Good, I said, smiling faintly. That means it might matter. She gave a breathy laugh, wiping her nose on the back of her hand like a kid again. You really think I could do it? I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I'm willing to find out. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the muffled thrum of music and laughter from the party behind us. The night had softened, so had we. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible, she said one last time. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the stars barely visible between the clouds. Just don't forget I'm here now. I won't, she whispered. And for once, I believed her. Later that night, as the last guests trickled out and the smell of charcoal hung thick in the air, I lit the fire pit. It was something we rarely used, a decorative afterthought in the backyard Dad once promised to really finish someday. But tonight it was exactly what we needed. A circle. No noise, no distractions, just truth. I asked Madison to gather everyone. And to my surprise, she did. One by one, they came out into the backyard, still sticky from the heat, still unsure what was happening. Mom brought her wine. Dad wore that fake smile tightness he used when he knew a lecture was coming. Chloe, the youngest, shuffled behind them, scrolling on her phone, pretending not to care. Maddie sat beside me, fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. She looked nervous, but determined. When the fire caught, casting gold and orange flickers across their faces, I finally spoke. We need to say the things we never said, I said quietly. The things you pretend didn't happen. Dad exhaled. Eliza, look, we're sorry. This isn't about being sorry, I interrupted. It's about being honest for once. Silence stretched between us. Mom took a sip of her wine but didn't interrupt. Madison swallowed hard. Her voice was shaky when she spoke, but it didn't waver. You praised us for doing the bare minimum, she said, eyes flicking toward our parents. But Eliza, she carried all of us. You handed her our homework, our chores, your stress, and she never got anything back. Not even a thank you. Mom blinked, clearly not expecting that from her favorite. I mean, Maddie pressed on, voice rising with emotion, you made her into this perfect older sister robot who never needed anything. And we believed it. We used her. I used her. Dad shifted in his seat, glancing uncomfortably toward the house. It wasn't like that. Yes, it was, Chloe said suddenly, eyes still on her phone. I never would have passed algebra without her. Eliza stayed up with me, taught me the way the teacher couldn't. She was the only one who noticed I was failing. We all turned to look at her. Even Maddie, she didn't look up, but her voice was steady now. She was the only real adult in the house, Chloe added. A crackle from the fire. No one dared breathe. I looked at Mom. Do you even remember the last time you asked me how I was doing without following it up with a favor? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Dad glanced between us like he was seeing a picture that had always hung on the wall, but now, for the first time, was lit up under a harsh light. The cracks were showing, the peeling edges, the frame that didn't quite fit. You told me I was more responsible, I said. Like it was a compliment, like it gave you permission to lean on me until my back bent. The silence that followed wasn't angry, it was stunned. Because for once, they couldn't deny it. Not with Maddie's mascara-streaked cheeks. Not with Chloe's confession. Not with the firelight exposing every tired excuse they'd leaned on for years. Maddie reached for my hand. I let her take it. I didn't protect you, she said softly, voice breaking. You protected me, every single time. Tears welled in my eyes, but they didn't fall. I had cried enough for this family. Tonight was about saying what needed to be said. I'm not angry anymore, I told them. But I won't carry this house on my back one more day. If you want to know me, really know me, you're going to have to do the work, like I did every day. No one spoke. Just the fire, crackling and bright, as the heat from truth hung in the air longer than any apology ever could. The flames had burned low, just glowing embers now, but the air around us still pulsed with heat. I stood slowly, brushing invisible dust from my slacks, letting the silence hang. My shoulders rolled back on instinct. Not out of arrogance, out of clarity. Out of the weight I was no longer willing to carry. I need you both to hear this, I said, looking directly at our parents. Not as your daughter, not as the overachiever, not as the responsible one. They didn't respond. You used me, I continued. My work, my love, my loyalty. And when you were done, when I had nothing else to give, you threw me away like none of it mattered. Dad's mouth opened. But no sound came. Mom held her wine glass a little too tightly. Her knuckles were white. I built your good reputation, I said, voice calm now, cold. I made sure Maddie passed her classes. I got Chloe through math. I kept this family stitched together while you praised everyone else for showing up. You never once asked what it cost me. Still, they said nothing. Maybe they thought I was bluffing. Maybe they didn't realize I'd finally let go of hoping they'd understand. I'm building something now, I said louder. A company, a team. A life where people are seen and valued for effort, not just convenience. I turned toward Madison and Chloe. And that includes them, Maddie, Chloe, they've chosen to show up, and that matters more than blood or birthdays or barbecues ever will. Both girls looked up at me, stunned but proud. I turned back to our parents just once more. But you, the fire reflected in my eyes. You don't get to be part of this. Not anymore. Mom blinked fast, as if trying to process a foreign language. You're saying we're not invited? She asked, her voice a notch too high. No, I said steady. I'm saying you never earned a seat. And with that I turned. Madison stood first, wiping her cheeks and falling in beside me without hesitation. Chloe followed, slipping her phone into her back pocket, saying nothing but walking tall. 3 daughters. One path. Behind us the fire crackled. Our parents didn't move, didn't call after us, didn't beg, because this wasn't a dramatic storm out. It was something far more powerful. It was the first time I'd ever walked away without guilt. And the first time they realized I wouldn't be coming back to the version of me they could control. The soft buzz of fluorescent lights and the clatter of keyboards had become my new soundtrack. The Verge office wasn't glamorous, yet. There were exposed pipes, mismatched desks, and a fridge that groaned every time it closed. But to me, it was sacred ground. Every piece of it had been built by sweat, belief, and long nights. And now it was growing. I glanced at the door just as it creaked open, and 2 familiar figures stepped inside. Maddie, wearing slacks slightly too long and a blazer she clearly borrowed from Chloe, smiled nervously as she held up a reusable coffee cup like a peace offering. Chloe, ever more composed, had her hair in a clean braid and a sleek tablet clutched under one arm. Do we sit anywhere, or is there a blood initiation first? She asked with that dry smirk of hers. I laughed. It felt strange good, but strange to see them in this space. The part of my life that had once felt like a secret haven, a world where I didn't have to be the older sister or the overlooked daughter. Now I was the one holding the door open. Welcome to Verge, I said, motioning them forward. Hope you brought comfortable shoes. We're not curing cancer, but compost doesn't carry itself. Maddie exhaled, her shoulders relaxing a little. This feels real. It is, I said simply. And it's yours to earn. I handed them each a slim folder, our modest onboarding packet filled with startup expectations, their role breakdowns, and a little welcome letter I'd written the night before. Chloe opened hers and raised an eyebrow. You quoted yourself in the mission statement. That's called branding, I replied. From across the office, Ryan walked over, hands in his hoodie pockets and a lazy grin on his face. So this is the infamous family, he teased. Maddie's cheeks turned pink. Please don't say that like we're a band that broke up in public. Ryan chuckled and offered them both a hand. I'm Ryan, co-founder and unofficial snack czar. Chloe, my youngest sister, replied, shaking his hand. Eliza's shadow during high school. Maddie, the other added softly. The complicated one. He glanced at me, then back at them. Well, you're in good hands now. Just don't be afraid to ask her things. She pretends she's scary, but she's the nicest boss we've got. She's the only boss you've got, I shot back, narrowing my eyes. He gave me a wink and patted my shoulder. They'll be good, you were always the best teacher. I felt the words settle somewhere deeper than I expected, not just because they were kind, but because they were true. All those nights I spent explaining assignments to Maddie, breaking down math problems with Chloe, or organizing their lives when no one else would, it wasn't wasted. It had built something, a strength I hadn't even known I was cultivating. Now I was pouring it into a company, and into them. I watched as they settled at their desks, side by side, reading their materials, asking questions, helping each other navigate the clunky internal app. They were nervous, sure, but they were also trying. Trying mattered. And this time, I wasn't being taken for granted. I turned back toward my office, the one with the tiny whiteboard and a wilting fern by the window, and felt a quiet, unexpected peace. They were here, on their own terms, because they chose to be. And for the first time, it felt like family wasn't something I had to survive. It was something I could build better, stronger, and entirely from scratch. 2 years later, I stood center stage, the red tech circle under my heels, 1,000 eyes focused on me. And for once, I wasn't nervous. I was ready. The backdrop glowed a soft crimson, casting long shadows on the sleek wooden floor of the New York City auditorium. My hands were open, steady. My voice clear. I looked out over the audience, then toward the front row. There they were, Maddie, Chloe, sitting shoulder to shoulder. Maddie's hair was now a sleek bob, her posture strong and steady. Chloe had grown taller, somehow even more confident than I remembered, her expression sharp and proud. They beamed at me. I let myself hold their gaze for a moment before beginning. "My name is Eliza Rowan," I said, the mic catching every breath, "and for most of my life I thought success was about proving people wrong." A soft murmur of recognition rippled through the crowd. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I earned the grades, built the startup, got the degrees, then maybe the people who overlooked me would finally see me. I paused. Let the silence land. "But here's what I've learned," I continued, walking slowly along the edge of the stage. "Sometimes the family you fight hardest to impress will never see you, and that's okay." I let that hang, watched a few heads nod. Because when you stop trying to earn love you've already given, you finally make space for something far more valuable, the respect you deserve. Applause. Not loud, but warm, deep, understanding. I smiled. "It took a long time to stop shrinking," I said. "To stop apologizing for being driven, for being dependable, for being the person everyone leaned on until I disappeared." The words weren't rehearsed anymore, they were truth, muscle memory. "But the greatest freedom I've found," I said, my voice softening, "wasn't in breaking away, it was in choosing who gets to walk beside me." I looked down again. Maddie had tears in her eyes. Chloe was clapping before the audience had even caught up. That was the difference now. They showed up. And they kept showing up. Afterward backstage, I hugged them both tight. "Not the way we used to, this wasn't obligatory, this was earned." "You crushed it," Chloe whispered, stealing a photo of us mid-hug. "Seriously, I think someone in the second row was crying harder than Maddie." "Rude," Maddie muttered, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "I'm emotionally invested, okay?" We laughed together. Real, open laughter, not performative, not fragile. Just three women sisters, finally standing on level ground.